Scott McNair, injury attorneys, we fight for the win.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Overruled podcast, brought to you by the Scott Vicnair Law Firm. This is David Vicnair, along with my law partner, Brad Scott. Good morning, Brad.
Good morning.
And we're excited to bring you a great episode this morning. It's a beautiful day in New Orleans. We are about a month from the humidity coming back into our lives, but we have a great guest this morning. It's Mike Alder, who is a very accomplished and prolific trial lawyer in Southern California, but also, side note, originally from Louisiana, received his law degree in Louisiana, and we can't wait to talk about Mike, about some lessons he's learned in his life in law, but also, more importantly, some neat ventures and things that he's done outside of law. So welcome to the Overruled podcast, Mike. We're excited to have you. Thanks.
Thanks very much, guys. Happy to be here.
So, Mike, why don't you just jump right into it and tell the audience a little bit about yourself, how you ended up in California from Louisiana?
I grew up the son of a traveling preacher, and my parents met at a Bible college in Tupelo, Mississippi, and then my mom was from Washington Parish, Isabel, Enon, Bogalusa area, and ultimately, when I was about 4 years old, after traveling, they couldn't really make it as preachers, and they were teachers, and we moved to Louisiana. That's where I grew up, and that's where I'm from. So I grew up in Folsom. I went to school in Covington and then LSU undergrad and law school, and loving life. Have had as many experiences as anybody that you can think of, good, bad, and ugly, otherwise beautiful. And I've learned a lot. And, 6 kids later, 2 wives later, it's a beautiful life.
And you still have all your hair, so I'm very impressed.
Well, when you move to California, doesn't your hair grow? It's one of
Is that what I need to do? All right, I'm coming your way. So how did you end up in California, that move from Louisiana to California? How did that take place? What's the story there?
So if you have a lot of listeners from Louisiana, I was at LSU in Acacia fraternity, and I'm, drunk on the front lawn of my fraternity at, 19 years old. Back then it was legal. I could drink, I was grandfathered in. And I met this woman, and she said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I kind of like to have another beer. What do you want to do? And she said, well, I'm going to go to law school. I'm going to move to California. I'm going to become an entertainment lawyer. And I was like, law school, huh? Sure. Anyway, I got married at 19, and we did move to California through a year of clerking for the Mississippi Supreme Court. My former wife was number 1 in our class for quite a while and clerked for the U.S. Circuit. I then got a job on Mississippi Supreme Court for a year clerking, and then moved to California. And she did become an entertainment lawyer. And interestingly, I didn't know what kind of law I wanted to practice. I thought I wanted to be a tax lawyer.
Oh, that's exciting.
But thank God I'm a very giving person, so I helped the top 50% of my class get there. And so my grades were not good enough. Thank you, Lord Jesus, to get a job as a tax lawyer. But one of the justices on the Mississippi Supreme Court, a guy named Chuck McCrae, phenomenal person, was a trial lawyer, and he would tell war stories. And I was like, that's what I want to do. And so I moved to LA. I don't think I had ever been west of Houston until I was like 25. Here I go to LA, and I interview. I'm 0 for 7, and the 8th person offers me a job. I go, yes. He goes, well, you don't know how much it costs. I'm like, I'm married to a sugar mama. I accept. Anyway, that job didn't pan out. He was kind of rolling, older gentleman, but he was the generation of trial lawyer before the generation of trial lawyer that I then interviewed with, who said, look, if you're good enough for a man named David Harney, you're good enough for me. And so I went to work for a guy in LA who mentored and was the mentor for many of the best trial lawyers in LA. And so 4 years of just, trying 8-figure cases back in the 90s.
Yeah.
So when I opened my own firm in 2000, 24 years ago, I was, I was young and I had one case, but I learned that I had learned a lot. And so when I put the word out that I will try anything that moved, Turned out I was a lot better at it than I thought I was. And then as soon as you start winning, and then I won this big award in LA, Trial Lawyer of the Year, back when I was the youngest to ever win it. And then everybody wanted to know me. And then the cases came, and then the bigger cases came.
It snowballs.
You know, and it snowballs. And to the detriment of my marriage, to the detriment of my older children, candidly, I have learned quite a bit. I got divorced, remarried a few years ago, inherited 2 beautiful bonus daughters, and I have 2 little boys through surrogacy. So we have 6 kids between us, and going through all of that and between the marriages, thinking I'm all that in a bag of chips and actually hitting rock bottom.
It resets things, doesn't it?
It taught me a lot, you know, and so I don't take things for granted nearly as much as I did. And I appreciate life way, way more. And so, you know, now I'm a trial lawyer, but I'm a rancher. I'm a country guy. I'm a life skills guy. I spend a lot of time helping less experienced people. They're not younger, because that would mean I'm older. Less experienced people figuring shit out and getting through stuff that we all have gone through, you know, and good life.
One of the things we always talk about, and you brought up in that intro there, is mentorship. You know, a lot of your life career and the path you're on started with mentors, and now you're at a point in your life where you're able to mentor other people as well. And it's one of the things we always say to people is that no matter where you're at on your journey, there's people behind you that can definitely use your experience and learn from you. And there's also people ahead of you that you can get into mastermind groups and coaching places with and learn from other people. So you always want to kind of be looking at mentorship from both perspectives. And I know it seems like you do a lot of mentoring. You're always, you know, trying to help those people that are behind you in that journey. What are some of the things that you're doing out there? I know we've seen your YouTube channel and stuff like that, but how important is mentorship for you and kind of passing that on to that next generation?
The passing it on is a byproduct of the much bigger thing of, and I say this, I said my parents, particularly my dad, he got smarter the older I got, right? So
I'm waiting for my daughter to hit that point to realize that about me.
And you know, you guys probably know, Pentecostal preacher, you know, fire and brimstone, scared the crap out of me. I was like, I moved to liberal Cal. I'm like, I'm out of here. But I realized I picked up a lot of things that had benefited me. Giving is just a part of my DNA, but not in a way that is solicitous. I find the more I give, the more I get. I find the more I help, the more help I get. The more money I give away, the more money I get. The more love I give away, the more love I get. And it's a benefit to be able to help. So mentorship is really just a function of the greater idea of giving in all of ways that you can. You know, I give to lawyers through mentor, through helping, but I give, you know, we're very, very active in our community because it's a wonderful thing. And you get back from everybody. That doesn't necessarily have to be mentorship in law. It can be mentorship in mindset. It can be mentorship in health. You know, I'm in my mid 50s and I have a lot of guys, you know, who say, I look for your story on Instagram every morning in the gym so that I can hold myself accountable. And you actually will text me and say, hey, what's going on? How's it going? Whatever. When I fall off the track, I'm like, let's get back on the track. Screw it. Failure's not an identity. It just happened. Let's get over it.
Move.
That's mentorship. That's giving as well. But you know what it also does? It means I have to get in the gym every morning because people are going to watch me. So it helps me as well. So
an example, and it pushes you. Absolutely.
It does.
So people are looking.
It absolutely does. And so it's all good, you know?
I can tell from talking to you, you have a similar mindset like we do of abundance. You know, there's plenty enough for everybody you can give. And unfortunately, like in our profession, we see it a lot with a lot of attorneys. They have the opposite. They think that everything's a limited resource. They want to kind of corral everything. And just, isn't it, we love to see people and meet people like you that have that abundance mindset also.
Yeah.
Very refreshing. It's important.
Well, and I can see that you guys believe that getting ahead does not mean that someone else has to be behind.
Right.
Exactly.
And the whole idea of all boats can rise is really a mindset that, we share. And if people say, well, that means you're weak, that means you give excuses for not being successful or not winning, and there can only be one winner, and you saying that there's more than one winner means you're a loser. You know what I do with that? I say, I appreciate your opinion. I really don't want to be around you.
Right.
Later. Right. And you know what? That's the way you live. Everybody has their own spotlight that we all think is on us and us only. And everybody feels that way. So we all have the thing that we think is us central, but we're all living our lives. And you know what? Once you realize that and you can kind of say, look, I get it. Go live your life. You're just not going to deal with me. And I'm fine with that.
That makes me think of before Charlie Munger passed away, who was Warren Buffett's loan partner. He had that great quote that he said, the great lesson of life is to take toxic people and immediately remove them from your life. So I always remind myself of that because, yeah, I mean, in business and in law or anything, I mean, I think Brad's right, and you've probably seen it, Mike, is a ton of lawyers with that mindset. But the truth of it is, a lot of the stuff we do in the law firm from a training and a business coaching and growth perspective, we're always talking about like the law firm as a team. And I think of a lot of this stuff in a sports mentality, which is like competition's good for any team. But, we want other law firms that we compete with to be strong because they give the public better representation options. They give a better light on the profession, and we don't view it as we're competing with them. We view that we're doing our own thing and strengthening our own team.
It's win-win for everybody.
Yeah.
Well, but let me ask some of your listeners, okay? Especially if you're a lawyer. You just settled a $10 million case. You are so excited for your client who has a life-changing event, for your firm and your family and everything, for a life-changing fee. And then tomorrow you see someone just settled an $11 million case. Does that have anything to do with your $10 million settlement? If it does, take a look.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
And candidly, when I recognize that, which happens all the time, what do? I delete Instagram. I mean, because it's such a natural thing, right?
Yep.
I've got $3 billion in settlements and verdicts. And if I'm pissed off when somebody gets 4, I'm like, I need to reset. I need to go out in the sun. I need to hug my child. I need to hug my wife. Do something, because that is a zero-sum game, because there's always somebody faster, prettier, stronger, richer, more hair, less hair,
100%.
Always.
But really the magic in it, just from my perspective, Mike, is acknowledging that we're all human and it's okay to have that initial reaction, but being introspective enough of recognizing it and stopping it when it happens.
Exactly.
Right.
You're 100% right. It's that catch that is really important.
I have to ask you, of all the successful verdicts and settlements that you've had, and I do, because we have a lot of non-lawyers who listen to the podcast, because I think this discussion will be insightful to life and other businesses in general, aside from just law. From my vantage point, I've learned way more in the cases that went to verdict that I lost, or even if we weren't zeroed, that we didn't get everything that we're asking for. I learned a lot more lessons and became a much better trial lawyer, I believe, in those cases than the ones where we got multi-million-dollar verdicts. So I'm curious about your perspective on that. Have you learned more in the cases that you lost or didn't go the way you anticipated? Or have you learned a little bit of both from all? Could you kind of give some perspective on the lessons you've learned from the failures versus the successes?
Those are tough questions. A lot easier to think about, like a normal answer. I learned way more from my losses.
Right.
My losses fucking sucked, right? They were, and
Yeah.
and most of my losses I didn't see coming, right? I had convinced myself by the time of the end of my closing argument that I was 100% right. Now, later on, when I go back and I look at it and I realize that had I put this in more perspective, maybe I would have done things differently and looked at it differently. You know, the biggest verdicts that I've ever received are really where the other side has misread the case completely. And the biggest losses that I've had is where I've misread the case completely. I can answer that in a way of, well, a loss makes you work harder, makes you humbler, whatever, you know, more humble, et cetera. But really it's a step back with an overall perspective that you're going to have wins and losses. You're going to have things that are not fair. And there's going to be sometimes where it's not fair in your favor, right? Where you're not expecting something. That ability to kind of keep consistent, keep going with that perspective. You know, when yesterday we asked the court, when we got a trial in 2 weeks and we asked for another 2-week extension just because of something happened, and they kicked the trial a year. Yeah. And you're like, how do you deal with that? I mean, that's infuriating, but
it is. Yeah.
But then you think about it from a different perspective and you're like, okay, my first then thought is, how do I help my client? And so those things you learn from wins and losses and experience. I mean, I know that's not a very good answer, but.
No, I think you're probably right, because I think it is not as simple as just cleaning it up as the way you said it, you know? And I think in some ways, I mean, we had a very good result in the end of the fall last year. And like my message to the whole team was like, stay humble, because it's hard to stay humble after you have a big win in business or in law for what we do. But the interesting thing about our profession, Mike, which you probably agree, is it has an interesting way of humbling you. I like to talk to Brett about, right? When you think, even if you don't humble yourself, it's going to find a way to humble you, right?
Yeah. And from my perspective, you know, with losses and failures, it really comes down to the person and their mindset. And there's two types of people. Some people, to get a loss, to get a failure, they blame everybody else for the loss and the failure. And there's other people who look at a loss and failure and they become very reflective about it and start trying to diagram and figure out what happened and learning from it. Those are the people that the success ladder goes a lot faster for. And I think that's where it's critical to, you know, I've learned a lot more from failing, and I've failed a lot in my life, but it's like figuring out what not to do. But you have to have that mindset to reflect on that, accept some and ownership of it, and move forward and not blame other people for it. So I think it's really important. And Mike strikes me as the type of person who learns very quickly from those things and don't repeat the same mistakes, so to speak.
Well, and you know, I have two mottos in my firm from a general standpoint. We have a lot of things internally that we talk about, but to give unconditionally, ask for nothing back, you get back 1,000-fold. And, you know, David, as you're talking about, in victory, be humble. In defeat, be gracious. Yeah. And I have changed my definition of humility. We all grew up in the South, right? Humility means push it away, downgrade it, don't accept it. You know, I learned the humility that now I realize is probably not a very healthy way of being humble. Right. Being humble doesn't mean you can't appreciate the work and the things that have gone well, right? I don't know what the word is other than a better word for it. Maybe be respectful. Maybe is a better way of putting it, because humble doesn't mean downplay. It doesn't mean not accept the benefits. To me, now humble means, hey, what's good is good, and put it into perspective. And, you know, what can I do with this to help people? That's a different definition than what I learned growing up, which was humble means don't tell anybody, don't get too big for your britches, you know, in a negative way almost. And I see it now as a positive.
It's interesting.
You know, guys, sorry.
No, that
don't mean to go off on tangents.
No, it's an interesting discussion because I feel that I read something about 6 months ago, and I actually have been thinking about this on and off. Is that like I probably was raised with a understanding that humility is critical and important and one of the most undervalued leadership traits, but I also don't think I really ever understood humility, truly. Like just being down here, it's like it's to, I used to look at it as like to say, oh no, like, or like verbalize to push it away and get it away from me. And then I think I've kind of realized I've reflected over that's kind of not authentic. Right? It's like if you just invite positive feedback and be respectful and thank people for it, like that doesn't make you any less humble, right?
Well, let me ask you, you got a great verdict last year.
Yep.
And I say, man, that was a great verdict. Congratulations. What were we trained to do? Oh, everybody, a blind squirrel gets a nut every once in a while. Oh, anybody, at some point, anybody. Or how about great verdict, wonderful job. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Exactly. Thank you. I appreciate that. We worked really hard and we had a really deserving client. We were excited.
Yeah.
Sometimes we're really bad at taking compliments.
I know.
Well, and we use the term of we want to be humble as actually deflecting responsibility and ownership. And like owning a good verdict is somehow being non-humble. That's not true, right? But that's what I did. I mean, when I was a less experienced lawyer, every verdict that I received from my client, the very next morning, I didn't talk about it in any way and pushed it aside and went to the next case because I wanted to be humble. Well, what I lost out on is the celebration of those wins, that quality hard work.
Right.
Interesting
discussion. I'm dying to know about your ranch in Covington, and I want you to plug it, but tell us a little bit about it. I was looking at it before we did the show, and it's beautiful. And
gorgeous, huh?
Yeah, it's really incredible. So tell our listeners a little bit about it, how it came to be, and what your plans for the property are.
So it's in Lee Road, that part of Covington, Lee Road. I mentioned I grew up in Folsom, so it's about 20 minutes from where I grew up. I'm licensed in Louisiana. I took the bar in Louisiana right after law school. My parents are no longer alive now, but they lived in Folsom all their lives. And so I'd come back and visit, et cetera. Well, anyway, long story short, COVID happens March of 2020. And in April, my father, who was living in Folsom, passed away from COVID. And I had just gotten engaged. And so my wife, who's from East Los Angeles, right? She's never been to the South, never been to
a ranch. That's exactly what was on her mind.
Well, we couldn't get back here until like July because of COVID. And I brought her and I'm showing her full. Oh, this is where I played Little League and this and what. And she's like, you love it here. I'm like, go Tigers, you love it here. And she goes, well, why don't you own property here? And I'm like, so anyway, so my sister-in-law was a real estate agent and we bought the place sight unseen off of the internet.
Wow.
Right. Turns out that the couple wanted to move to Texas to be with their grandkids. So they sold us the 2 homes on the 35 acres and we now have added property to it. They handed us the keys. So we got furniture, et cetera. So we were able to come in and move in and come visit right away. And of course, we brought people from Los Angeles who had never been, who had never mowed grass. It came with a bush hog and a tractor and a 360 mower and what. So I kind of hit the ground running. And then the more I came, the more I realized that I loved it so much. You use it and then you realize, hey, let's expand, let's build out. So now we've built and we've added. We built a barn, the fleur-de-lis event space. We now have animals. We have a pickleball and tennis court because I'm a big pickleball fan, a full gym, et cetera. And it just kind of happened. In the ZA Ranch, my wife's last name is Zapanta with a Z, and my last name is Alder. So it's ZA Ranch.
Notice who went first there, right, David?
Well, I'm having a brocation in June. It's my second one at the ranch, and y'all are welcome to come during the day. I've got people from, Miami, Colorado, New Jersey, LA. We all stay there. It sleeps about 30 and 20 to 30. So speakers, Navy SEALs coming in, and a person who's going to talk about Southern manners. And also teach about wine, because I learned, I worked at the wine and cheese shop in Baton Rouge in college, and I learned a little bit about wine, just enough that I knew
You
more
said
than
David's
anybody.
magic word, by the way.
Yeah, I'll be there.
Wine.
But let me ask y'all, my knowledge of wine, which is minuscule, but it's more than most people that I met, made me somebody to defer to. And wine is like the biggest fear thing ever, right?
Yep.
You get handed a wine list and you freeze. You're like, I don't want to. So one of the things I realized is we're going to teach some manners, putting the woman first. The ranch does not belong to Mike and Gina. It belongs to Gina and Mike. When you address a note, you address it to, Gina and Mike Alder, Gina Zapanta and Mike, that you walk on the outside next to the road, there's a lot of stuff that basic manners that when I tell couples, the woman usually says, yeah, I'm going to send my husband to that, right? And boys, 15 or older, sons are welcome as well. But we're also going to have a sommelier, and I'm going to also show about basic wine etiquette and knowledge, because I realized that my little bit of knowledge in wine, I can just name so many instances where I would take the wine list, I would ask a question, and I don't know crap.
Absolutely.
But then people would think I'm like, a 10th level master sommelier. And I'm like,
100%.
So that, you're right? Those kinds of things
I've been
are
collecting.
important.
I learned about wine from my uncle and dad, really my uncle, and then my brother and I really got into it. And so I've been collecting for about 9 years now. And it is just like law, in that it is very humbling. And when you think you know something about wine, you really like. And so everybody just generally thinks I know everything about wine. I know so little about wine.
I'm glad you're actually admitting that.
But it is like law. Wine is an area. The thing I think I am drawn to about it is, like, if you're a learner, like I can tell you are, Mike, and you want to learn and you want to keep learning, like I try to be. It's like you could learn about wine your entire life, and keep learning and not know. I mean, and even the most experienced sommeliers are still learning about it in different regions of France, of Italy, of California. So. And
to come full circle on the ranch, we have somebody who lives there full time, takes care of the animals, and now we're Airbnb-ing it, and both properties. We have some land that's adjacent, 11 acres, and we're building a structure there as well. But we have events. My wife has Mardi Gras events there for women. I have men's events. We're going to have a couple event. And then we had a wedding there. My nephew got married there 2 weeks ago. So it's an event space. It's an Airbnb space, but it's also just a 2 acres, catfish pond, animals, ATVs, archery. When my wife's not there, there's weapons, whatever, you name it.
Makes sounds like a fun place.
Yeah, what is the website, Mike? We'll put it in the show notes, but just so everybody knows that they want to rent it or use it for an event.
Thank you. It's Z as in zebra, ZA-ranch.com. So ZA-ranch.com. And I'd love to have y'all come out. I mean, I'd love to meet y'all in person next time we're there. I'm going to be in New Orleans next weekend for a wedding, but we're not going to go to the ranch, but we're going to stay in New Orleans. But certainly in June, I'll be there.
I would love. I'm actually going to be Brad's going to be with me at a legal conference up in Detroit next weekend. But would love to get offline with you and talk to you about some details about June.
Absolutely.
I would love to come out to that event. Seriously. I mean, talking about some of the different speakers that you would have there. I'm really interested to ask you this question, Mike, because I can just fascinated by your perspective on a lot of things already. Do you have a favorite book? And if so, what is it?
I'll tell you, I don't know if it's favorite, but it's the book that one of the first books that kind of got me on a path. Chop Wood, Carry Water by Joshua Medcalf. Chop Wood, Carry Water. I think I've given it to like 300 or 400 people already. But it was one of the things that when I was in my really drinking too much, eating too much, partying too much between, the divorce and this and whatever, picking myself up at some point. And I remember that book was very central. And it's a quick read, and it's just a parable about a kid who goes to Japan wants to become an archer, and he goes to the dojo, and it's the lessons that the dojo teaches him. And the first one is chop wood, carry water. And we need heat and we need water. And he's questioning, and basically there are basic things in your life that you need to pay attention to. And it builds on that. You got to go back to the basics. You got to go back to the routine, the consistency. And then he wrote a couple more books, and then he co-wrote a book with another guy called Pound the Stone. I became friends with that guy. He was on my podcast at some point. Robin Sharma, the monk who sold his Ferrari, the 5 a.m. club. A lot of the stuff that they're talking about, that I talk about, is what Marcus Aurelius talked about 2,000 years ago. Dale Carnegie talked about, Zig Ziglar talked about, Tony Robbins talks about, all the social media people talk about. That whole idea of excellence is not about talent. It's not about looks or money or whatever. Excellence is a result of consistent, mostly ordinary behavior over time to create good habits that you connect with other good habits to become excellent. And it's not sexy, and it's not, this big thing. It is hard work. Yep. And the beauty of that is that when we want to be successful, all we have to do is consistently step outside our comfort zone consistently over time, because 95% of people will quit.
Yep.
Will quit. And so I teach a lot of people, and myself included, about constantly doing things that are uncomfortable, constantly, let's talk about what do you really don't want to do. And somebody will say, I'm like, okay, let's go do it. Right. I'm not talking about jump off of Mount Everest. I'm talking about a cold plunge or running an extra mile or making your bed or taking a cold shower in the morning, but doing it consistently to step out. And I really kind of plugged in when I read that book. Now, since then, there's a million.
Right.
But that's where I'd start. That's the book I give to people when people are like, you have anything good to read? I'm like, start with this. I went to his publisher and bought like 500 books and just give them to people as when they want stuff. By the way, I've also written a book called The Trial Lawyer's Bible. I'll send you all a copy.
Yeah,
and in it is not only it's stuff for lawyers, but I wrote articles and sections about the stuff we're talking about too, But
I would love that. That'd be very nice.
But it's a good book recommendation, and it really is what you're saying. It's the little things and the basic things, and then you repeat them over and over, because a lot of people's thoughts on success is they're waiting for that big home run to happen.
100%.
Ticket. I actually have a sign on my desk right in front of me every day. It says, big things get done by doing small things daily. And, and that's the thing, is just showing up, consistency. I mean, you've probably read Stephen Covey, 7 Habits. I mean, the whole idea of planning and, showing up, sharpening the saw, and doing those little things consistently. That's how success happens over time. And it's an age-old concept. It's been done 100 times in different books, but people forget about that stuff. And, until you really kind of start focusing on that, it's hard to make movement forward. A lot of people just kind of go sideways through life until they start planning things and doing those things consistently.
It's so interesting. I had a call yesterday from a guy I've never met in San Antonio. He called me, follows me on social media. He's less experienced. He almost said younger, less experienced plaintiff's lawyer. And he starts talking to me about, can you help me with kind of getting myself organized? And I said, let me guess. And I went through the things. I said, I bet that you've got so much to do, so much on your mind. You got so many dreams, so many things that you want to do, that you're many times paralyzed and you can't do anything. He's like, how did you know that? I'm like, because that's
Everybody does it.
universal.
Yeah.
I said, do you have written goals? No. Do you have routines written down? No. I said, do you have goals? Absolutely. Do you have dreams and routines? I do. So I referred him to something that I did that's on my YouTube channel, which was a goal setting kind of thing I did with a bunch of people. And I said, do it and call me. He then sent it to me and I helped him become more specific. And then I said, okay, now let's take those and create a routine list. And I sent him my routine list, right? Stuff I do every day. And within 24 hours, he texts me and he's like, I have more time. I have more focus. I'm like, and all of that is just a learned skill. It's not like he became somebody different, somebody smarter or more talented. These are all skills that need to be taught, that you learn, and then you have people that mentor you and hold you accountable. I get up in the morning and, text or message God knows how many people. Hey, how's it going? How's that cold shower? How's that? And they do it with me. And we all need people like that.
Absolutely.
At certain points in our life. But that's why I tell people, hey, I got good shit on my YouTube channel. I got good. And they're like, yeah, whatever. I know you want subscribers because, by the way, I'm up to $58.04 on my YouTube payment. So I'm cooking with gas, guys. So
well, I saw one of your YouTube videos. You mentioned 75 hard and going through that process. And again, it's the basics, just repeating the simple things over and over. But do you recommend somebody? I've done it before myself. Do you recommend 75 hard to other people? What's your take on that?
I do. I recommend anything that requires you to consistently be uncomfortable, right? And 75 hard is just exactly that. It's not the greatest workout. It's not the greatest, right? But doing it requires you to do things that make you better at other things.
Yeah.
Right.
Habits.
And I'm on, Duolingo. They're like, well, you want to become fluent in Spanish. I'm on like day 450 of Duolingo. Part of that is, of course, I want to speak Spanish. My whole family, all my kids speak it. My wife speaks it. I, no habla español most of the time. But the secondary thing is I'm holding myself accountable to something that's not in my comfort zone every single day. And you know what? When you ask me what makes you a good trial lawyer, I will probably say I take a cold shower every day. I make my bed and I do Duolingo. And I exercise every day. That's what makes me a good trial lawyer. And they're like, but because if you're not able to do the basic things that are uncomfortable, that are difficult, that you suffer with on a regular basis, you're not going to be prepared for the month-long trial against the juggernaut that requires you to heighten all of those skills over a long period of time. You're just not. So I teach a law school class here at Loyola, and the first question I always ask is, how do I be a billionaire and a great trial lawyer in 30 days or less? That's what all the students ask. And I said, you want to be a great trial lawyer? I said, make your bed every day and take a cold shower. And they think I'm nuts. But by the end of the semester, they all have chop wood, carry water. They're all and
they
come full circle.
Good.
I love it.
And this morning I got a text from a former law student. Hey, Professor Alder, can you help me organize and think something? That's what it takes, man.
I love it. And the crazy thing for me, at least, is like that workout in the morning also clears my head. It puts me in a positive place. Brad and I, every now and then, would I don't know if we just tell listeners, whatever. We talk at like 7 a.m. because we both know we're up. And nobody's bothering us. Nobody's interrupting us. Most of the world isn't really moving yet. But the funny thing about consistency, Mike, is it also, being a huge follower of, I mentioned Charlie Munger earlier, but Warren Buffett, is like, it really follows, from my perspective at least, in everything in life. Every time I get like a question from somebody about like investment or just a discussion on like, hey, what should I do if I want to, like, whatever, I'm like, you're going to be really not like my answer probably, because my perspective on this from Rich Dad, Poor Dad to like every book through to really ending with Warren Buffett is like, how much can you afford to put in an index fund and just forget that it's there every single month and do it consistently over time, and being wealthy is pretty easy. It's called compound interest, but it's, it's just like everything else, right?
Everybody
it's
wants
not
the big sexy
it's
answer.
not
Yeah.
the lottery ticket, and it's just not what people want, because it's just the power of consistency and discipline.
Everybody's looking for that,
Well-
that hack and that shortcut, and those shortcuts and hacks don't get you where you want to go. You got to put the time in.
Well, and it's that patience, right? We all have put stuff in an index fund. We've all taken it out because we're like, wait, Tesla, wait, and it's that consistency of patience. One of on my routine list, right, is today be calm and patient. All good things will come. It's so difficult, right? I have struggled with it every single day. What's interesting is I posted something yesterday about that, and about how I had a shitty day the day before and I had to just reset and pick up. And I got so many texts from people going, it's great to know that everybody has bad days.
Yep.
We all do.
In the world we live in these days, I mean, almost everything is instant gratitude. And kind of when I grew up in in a country area as well. One of the biggest lessons I learned was my grandfather, because he always had a vegetable garden. And the concept as a child of having to put something in the ground and have to show up every single day and water
It's beautiful.
every day and weed it, and then 3 or 4 months from now you get food out of it. That mindset of planting and cultivating and growing, it applies to everything else in life. That slow train of doing things consistently, and that's where I picked it up from. Just vegetable gardening, and I think it's something that everybody should take up. It teaches you that patience that you talked about.
Totally agree. That's
Mike,
great.
Mike, I have one more question for you before we wrap up. It's been an incredible discussion with you, but I hate to ask you this, but if you could distill some of the traits that have made you successful and identify maybe one key thing, one key superpower of yours, one trait that you have that has really been your superpower, your unique trait, we all have them, that has led to your success, what would you say it is?
This is not the time to be humble.
Yeah.
Be respectful.
Oh, everybody can do it. We're all the same. I was able to let go of my past and not let it define me. And I think my biggest skill that I've learned is to take failure as an event and not an identity. And I've changed the mindset of failure from a negative to a positive. And the more I fail, I now say the better I am, because the more shots I have taken, the more I'm reaching outside of my comfort zone. If I succeeded at everything, then it's probably because I'm doing stuff that's really easy. And so how you view failure, for me, overall, if you had to pick the biggest thing, has been the biggest game changer for me. My failures in the past were events. My failures in the future are events. And that's what I would say.
It's important. Fail fast. That's what I always tell people. If you're not failing, you're not taking the shots. Exactly like you said.
Love it. Thanks so much for being with us, Mike. This has been an incredible discussion. Before we do wrap the show, though, I would really love for you to, one more time, plug both the ranch and your law firm's website and tell
Sure.
how they could find both.
So my last name is Alder. I win all of my cases, Alder. So
humility coming out there.
He's a trial lawyer.
That's actually called good marketing, because people remember that. They're like, what that motherfucker? So Alder Law is the name of my firm, my website. Alder Talk is my YouTube site, and the ranch is in Covington, and my Zapanta Alder, ZA Ranch. So ZA-Ranch is a website. Please. There's a way to reach me there on Instagram, on YouTube, on my website. I'd love to meet as many people and have anybody come over. Just come on over and let's visit.
I would encourage everybody, go find him on YouTube, listen to you speak, and a lot of the positive messaging and mindset stuff you do is beneficial to everybody. Everybody needs to hear this stuff and learn this stuff, especially young people who are coming out of college and starting a career. The earlier you can get these lessons, the more success you're going to have much faster.
100%. And I'll reach out to y'all offline and give you all my info, and I'll send you the books. And I'd love to have y'all come over in June.
Absolutely.
Yeah, really looking forward to it. Thank you so much, Mike. It's been an incredible show, a great discussion. Thank you to all of our listeners and viewers for following along. This has been a great show, Brad. Appreciate it. And once again, this is the Overruled podcast, brought to you by the Scott Vignair Law Firm. This is David Vignair signing off with my co-host, Brad Scott. Thank you, Mike. And to all of our listeners, we look forward to seeing you next time.
Y'all take care.
Scott Vignair, injury attorneys, we fight for the win.
Information is for illustrative purposes only and does not constitute tax, investment, or legal advice. Always consult with a qualified investment, legal, or tax professional before taking any action.